Check. 1, 2, 3.
The
Brief.
This is the Debrief.
Your guide to Detroit.
Your guide to Detroit's arts
and entertainment scene.
This is the Debrief.
All right, welcome to the Debrief for the week of January 15th, 2018. How you doing, Mike?
I am A-OK, Seth.
That right there is Mike Jeter. He is the co-host.
I am.
I am your other co-host. My name is Seth Ressler, and on today's show, we have Delisi of WDET. She hosts the weekend show Essential Music there. We're going to talk to her all about what's going on in music, both here in Detroit and nationally, because she takes care of it all. Also, we have Tim Kiska. You remember our good friend Tim?
I do. Yeah. Wonderful man.
Yeah, we interviewed him on our other podcast a while back when we were talking about Detroiters. He's over at the University of Michigan Dearborn, where he teaches journalism, and he has a brand new podcast. I got to tell you, I've heard a couple of episodes. It's fantastic. It's called the Detroit History Podcast.
I'm very interested in listening to that.
Yeah, you'd be into this. You'd love
Tim.
So we'll talk about that. Also, we've got James Dull. He is the producing artistic director over at the Tipping Pointe Theater in Northville. You been there?
I have several times.
It's a nice room.
Very nice, man.
Yeah, little black box theater. They're putting on a production called Every Brilliant Thing. It is a comedy about depression.
What?
Yeah.
That's a paradox.
Depression's funny, dude. It's hilarious.
Paradoxical.
It's.
I like that word.
So we'll talk to James about that. Also, we've got all your concerts, comedy, movies, plays, and really everything that's going on in Detroit nightlife. We'll be talking about it all on this episode.
The Debrief.
History lesson.
All right, Mike, you know how it works. Every week, because I am the new guy to the Detroit area. You are the guy who has been here for a long, long time.
I am somewhat knowledgeable, but you wouldn't know that by the questions I keep missing.
No, but we're trying to make me knowledgeable so that,
I know of places. I don't know about those places that I know of.
Well, you gave me some homework at the end of the last episode.
That I did.
What was it?
Boblo Island Amusement Park.
Now, have you actually been to Boblo Island?
I was... I'm one of 17 kids, man.
Yeah.
You cannot afford... there isn't enough tickets that you can buy to get to Boblo.
To send 17 kids to Boblo Island.
No, not at all.
I understand. Well, I did some homework. I found out all about the Boblo Island Amusement Park. This was an amusement park for a long time.
Yeah.
1898.
Yeah, and they had the big giant... the old riverboat type of thing. Yeah, man.
I mean, huge. It went and lasted all the way until 1993. Closed on September 30th, 1993. But it was located at, am I pronouncing this? You got to check my French here. Bois Blanc. Is that pretty good?
Si.
That's Spanish, dude. But it's in Ontario, at the mouth of the Detroit River. So, did you need a passport to go over to Boblo Island?
No, not at all.
You could just get in, and it's like
back in the day, man. I mean, in 1993, you just drove over to Canada.
Oh, okay. There were no
you
holes.
Had your ID,
right.
nothing.
This is pre-Trump. That's
pre-Trump, pre 9/11. It was a beautiful thing.
We weren't worried about all the Canadians coming over.
No, not at
all. Well, anyway, for 85 years on Boblo Island, there were two boats. The SS St. Clair and the SS Columbia held about 2,500 passengers each. See, that could hold your whole family. You get them all in, just stow away.
There'll be one or two left. They'll get on a second boat.
And it was an 18-minute ferry ride from Detroit over to Boblo Island. There was a huge dance hall over there that Henry Ford actually financed. And I was reading that for a long time, there was a rumor that Albert Kahn designed this, but that wasn't actually the case.
No.
But Henry Ford financed it, held 5,000 people.
Wow.
That's a lot of people in a single dance hall. One of the first rides was the Whip, installed in 1920. It was a big hit. And there were other rides like the Nightmare. Like that name. Some of these rides got relocated. That was actually relocated to Six Flags in Houston, and now it's in Amarillo, Texas. Also, Falling Star, Sky Streak was another one. That's now in Guadalajara, Mexico. Screamer, and then the Boblo Scooter Boats. There as well, and the Thunderbolt. But none of this stuff's there anymore.
Not a bit.
No, it's all luxury homes.
It's all luxury homes.
Yeah. So
and memories.
And memories.
There's
not yours.
No, not mine.
but somebody's.
Yeah, mine was just full of wants.
You know, I did take this this cruise, around Belle Isle, and you could actually see the old Boblo.
Was that on the
garage.
Detroit Princess?
Yeah, I think that's what it was. And you could see the the big parking garage that people would park at when they were about to take these boats. So that's Boblo Island. I'm sorry I missed it. It sounds like good, wholesome family fun.
I do hope that with this whole renaissance in Detroit, that they do decide to put another amusement park down there or something, with a big Ferris wheel, kind of like Navy Pier in Chicago.
Yeah,
we have the land to do it. We have the skyline and the sights to do it. It would be awesome if they did that permanently.
Yeah, no, that would definitely be cool to have something like that to go to. I'm sorry I missed. I did look and I saw a bunch of the old commercials on YouTube. From
See the old
90s.
Faygo commercials.
Yeah,
a lot of lovers, man. A lot of people getting married and stuff on Bob.
So, all right. So that's my homework assignment.
Good job, man.
Thanks. Now I return the favor by giving you a pop quiz. Here's the way it works. I'm gonna give you 3 statements. 2 of them are true. 1 of them is false. You have to identify the false statement.
Seth, I'm not afraid of your questions.
Yeah,
I just won't get it right, but
you should be.
I missed a couple.
All right, you ready?
I am ready.
Here we go. Statement number 1. The dance hall on the island featured one of the world's largest orchestrions, an automated self-playing orchestra machine, which featured 419 pipes and its very own percussion section. Statement number 2. The state of Michigan brought a racial discrimination case against the operators of the Boblo Island ferry service that went all the way to the Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. And statement number 3. As a teenager, Aretha Franklin injured her neck on the tilt-a-whirl and was forced to cancel a concert performance at Boblo Island.
Okay.
All right.
Does she have like an elephant ear or something?
Probably. Maybe a nice Slurpee
good,
or something. Yeah. All right. We'll see at the end of the show. We'll come back and we'll see if you can answer any of those questions or that pop quiz.
Action. This is the D3.
On the screen.
All right, Mike, what's going on in the movie theaters?
All right, in the theaters, nationally, we have 12 Strong, and that's starring Chris Hemsworth and Michael Shannon. It's about the first 12 U.S. servicemen to go into the Middle East after 9/11.
Oh, wait, you got Thor. What do you need 11 more for?
And that's what I was saying, man. One hammer, he could take out all of the ISIS and Al-Qaeda and all of those guys, man. But they had to have one more, so Michael Shannon's in. He's a great actor. Love Michael Shannon. That's not rated yet on Rotten Tomatoes. And Den of Thieves, the big cop, good guy, bad guy action thriller. It has Gerard Butler, Pablo Schreiber, Curtis 50 Cent, you have to say it that way, 50 Cent Jackson, and O'Shea Jackson Jr.
It's nice to see 50 Cent getting work.
Where's he
been?
is, man.
He's been a while.
Yeah, he hasn't been rapping and stuff. He sold vitamin water. He bought it, to the Coke, so he doesn't have to rap anymore, really.
All right.
And O'Shea Jackson Jr., son of Ice Cube, the rapper Ice Cube.
The actor Ice Cube.
The actor.
It's been a while. When's the last time Ice Cube was a rapper?
It's a couple years ago he dropped an album.
He's like in family-friendly movies
how old I am. He dropped an album.
Right, yeah.
So, that isn't rated either, but it's getting a lot of play on the interwebs. At the Main Art Theater, Royal Oak, Blade Runner, Midnight Friday, the final cut.
Final cut?
With previously unseen special effects.
Final cut?
The final cut.
Because there's been a lot of cuts of this movie.
There's been director's cut, there's been cold cuts, there's been all kinds of cuts. But
really?
This is the final cut.
Special effects that haven't been seen before.
Yeah, you'll hear someone go, pew!
Oh.
Boom, boom, boom. Pew, pew. There's all of those things.
I wonder if Han shot first in this one.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, man.
Never mind. Never mind.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, Star Wars.
That's Friday midnight in Royal Oak at the Maple Theater and Kitchen in Bloomfield. You can go see Phantom Thread again. Another highly acclaimed movie with my buddy in it, and Romeo and Juliet is also playing a new version of Romeo and Juliet at the Detroit Film Theater. At the DIA, Beasts of the Southern Wild. It won an Oscar a few years ago. Excellent movie if you haven't seen it. It's a really cool movie about people living on the Mississippi Delta, very poor area on the Mississippi Delta. This father raising this little girl. A tremendous movie. I loved it. At the Redford Theater, That's Entertainment, the 90th anniversary of the Redford Theater. A big showcase there. They're going over all the movies that they've shown there and all of the happenings that have taken place over the years at the Reverend Theater, the 90th anniversary. You need to go check that out.
You know what? I was watching a movie last night on Netflix, a horror film, and I got about halfway through it before I realized that it was actually filmed here in the Detroit area. It Follows.
Oh yeah.
Have you seen this?
Yes, I have.
It's freaky. It's creepy, right?
It's a fun little movie.
Yeah, I liked it. I was into it, but I'm watching it, and then I see this intersection. I'm like, that looks like Berkeley, it's it was cool. So
they filmed it in a closet, I believe.
Well, that's frightening because that's where I live. So.
Did it follow you?
I'm worried about getting home now. Coming up in just a moment, we're going to talk about what you and I did last week. I made a trip out to Las Vegas to go to CES. We'll talk about that.
This is the Deep Brief.
Want more?
Your guide to Detroit's arts and entertainment scene.
Go to the debriefdetroit.com.
All right, Mike, you remember our good friend Tim Kiska. We interviewed him.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a real nice guy.
Great guy.
Yeah, and Tim has been a television news producer here in town. Now he is an associate professor over at the University of Michigan Dearborn campus, where he teaches journalism. And he's got a brand new podcast that he's been putting together. He's been working very hard on this. We've been talking about it for months, this project that he's doing. And I've actually gotten a chance to listen to a couple of the episodes. They're amazing. I mean, if you're into Detroit history, this is...
And why wouldn't you be?
Yeah, why wouldn't you be? No, this is definitely something that you would want to go check out. I actually sat down with Tim earlier this week and talked to him and started by saying, all right, tell me what you got for episode number 1 of the podcast. Here's what he said.
The pilot episode was about the Beatles, and it always amazes me that maybe you had to be there, but what an outsized impact they had on teenagers, particularly in this town. And I spent a lot of time with 2 people, Rose Marie LaPointe, who was, I believe, in 5th or 6th grade. And the Beatles pretty much consumed her life. I mean, she was going to school and all of that, but she'd read Beatles magazines and be up on the latest Beatles recording. And another guy named M.L. Liebler, who is a well-known, internationally known poet, who grew up in St. Clair Shores, who was totally consumed by the Beatles. He will tell you that he learned everything he needed to know up till about high school from the Beatles. And to this day, he later ended up writing a short story, which he turned into a stage show, which he does a lot all across the country on the impact that, what he was thinking when he first saw the Beatles, how they had an impact on him. And we're talking about how just this thing, these guys, even 50 years after they broke up, still have an impact on people to this very day.
My mom was a big Beatles fan, and she's always talking about, like the first time she saw him on Ed Sullivan and what a big deal it was when they came here. So,
well, friend of the show, Greg Russell.
Yeah.
Huge Beatles fan.
Yeah, he was. So that's a big deal when the Beatles first came here, to Detroit. I think it'd be cool to hear that story. He's got other episodes as well, though. They're all over the map. They're really, I think they focus on the 20th century, but he's got a lot of different topics in there. I asked him what episode number 2 of the podcast is about, and he told me it's about Coleman Young.
Second episode was about Coleman A. Young, who in his day, in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, was one of the most powerful men in the state of Michigan, certainly in the city of Detroit. But back in 1952, he was a labor organizer, and the House Un-American Activity. But very, very few people in the knew who he was. The House Un-American Activities Committee, which was looking for communists, a congressional committee, came to Detroit looking for commies, and they were pretty sure that the civil rights movement and the labor movement was infested with commies, so they subpoenaed him. Everybody else is diving for cover, pleading the Fifth Amendment, naming names. He went right back at him and was telling him stuff like, "Excuse me, sir, you have me mistaken for a stool pigeon." Or every time a Southern congressman would say the word Negro, he would say, "That word is Negro," and it got into this huge, debating match, almost a screaming match with these folks. It was a screaming match at certain points. It was so wild that somebody took the recording, turned it into a bootleg recording, and it got sold underground in the African-American community. And really, in 1952, really set him on, even though he didn't get elected for mayor for another 21 years, really kind of made him locally famous. Because, just think about it. How many African-Americans in this town in 1952 would have killed for a chance to talk back to a white congressman. Well, he did it, and he became famous. So I got a copy of the recording, cleaned it up, and played the recording. And I think people are pretty amazed. I mean, the transcript has been out there for a number of years. A few people have it, a few people don't. But when you hear the tone of his voice and the tone of their voice, it is quite remarkable.
You got any Coleman Young bootleg records hiding in the basement?
No,
there?
I don't. But Coleman Young was intense, man. He didn't play, man. He didn't play. He was the one that spearheaded the whole people mover thing. That was his big claim to fame. Yeah.
Wow.
But he was a very intense mayor.
Nice.
It was them versus the suburbs. Suburbs were like, we want to do this. And he's like, no, they're coming here to take over our land and all that, basically. He was a fighter for the city. I give him that much.
You know, it's interesting to hear about how they thought that the civil rights leaders and the commies were on the same side, because today, Black Lives Matter and the Russians, not on the same side.
Not on the same side.
Well, I asked him what episode 3 was about. Episode number 3 is about the Detroit Symphony Orchestra.
3 is about the Detroit Symphony, which in 1918 we were up until about about the early teens, we were not quite a B-list city, but in 1900 we were about the size of Milwaukee. By 1920 we were the 5th biggest city in this country, and we needed a halfway decent symphony. So the symphony went out and hired a guy, which is pretty much the town's movers and shakers, went out and hired a guy named Osip Gavrilovich, who was a Russian concert pianist, conductor, comes to town within 10 years, takes that symphony from a B-list orchestra to what was considered one of the best in the country. He forced them to build Orchestra Hall, which they did within 5 months. Get that, 5 months. And made this, Detroit, by 1928, into a classical music center. And we talk about how all of that was done. He was, by the way, Mark Twain's son-in-law. Twain was dead by the time Gavrilovich got here, but his daughter, Clara Clemens, Osip Gavrilovich's wife, was very much around. And it's about how he turned the symphony around. And by 1928, we did Carnegie Hall and blew the doors off the place. So they're going, huh? Detroit? Who knew? Who knew that these guys could play like that? Well, we could. And it's about that story.
Your city isn't really baller unless it's got a good symphony.
Has to.
Yeah.
You're like, hey, man, we're the 5th largest city. What are we missing?
Right.
A symphony?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a different day and age, right? Yes.
Yeah, everyone wore ties back then.
All right, episode number 4 of this podcast is not out yet, but I think this is one that you would be into. Here's what episode number 4 is going to be about.
It's about horror TV hosts here in Detroit. That job doesn't exist anymore, but there used to be a million of them across the country. Somebody who would get a old horror movie and dress up in some kind of costume and well, Detroit had its own collection. And I spent some time interviewing a guy named the Kuhl, also known as Ron Swede, who was a big deal around here, about his years as the Kuhl, and talk a little bit about what that was all about, which is essentially got started because Screen Gems went out and sold a package of about 4 dozen old horror movies, all pre-1948, to a bunch of TV stations in the late 50s, and said, by the way, these are old horror movies, but if you get somebody, dress them up, put on a show, the kids are going to watch, and you'll sell a lot of advertising. And that's what a lot of stations did. Thus was born the Detroit horror shows. And we talk about people that did that. Sir Graves Ghastly was a big deal around here. A guy named Morgus was a big deal around here. And then, of course, we talked to the Kuhl, who was a big deal both here in Detroit and Cleveland, by the way.
Did you watch that back in the day?
Religiously.
Really?
I mean, every Saturday afternoon, you had Sir Graves Ghastly, all of the classic movies. He would have like a special showing like on a Friday night where you would get 3D glasses. So they had like the Creature from the Black Lagoon, and you would go to Kroger or Farmer Jack back then, get the 3D glasses and watch it in 3D. It wasn't that good in 3D, but it's just the whole excitement of it, man. Oh, man, Creature from the Black Lagoon, Frankenstein, Dracula, The Thing, all of those things, man. I love old horror movies.
Nice.
Love them.
Nice. And what did these guys do? They just kind of introduced it and did little bits?
Right, and they did little skits in between, like, to come back from commercial, they do a little skit, and then it goes back to the movie. And then, hour and a half, 2 hours pass, and boom.
All right, well, that episode's coming out. So as soon as it
cannot
is,
wait.
yeah, no, that'll be good. Well, you know, Tim worked in traditional media for a long time. He was over at the Detroit Free Press, the Detroit News, WXYZ. So I asked him, you know, how does he like creating these podcasts, and how is it different, you know, than the traditional news that he's been doing?
I'm just floored by the possibilities and what you can do. I mean, I worked for a number of years at WWJ, the CBS All News radio station. Had a great time there, but the maximum piece there was 45 seconds. If you did a 46-second piece, the news director would come screaming out of the office. These podcasts, you have, all kinds of production things that you can do to make history come alive. It's just the genre is just open with possibilities.
Yeah, we're pioneers, man.
Look at that. We're like Lewis and Clark.
So look, if you want to check out the Detroit History Podcast, you can find it at DetroitHistoryPodcast.com, or you can go check it out in Apple Podcasts. But I highly recommend that you do. Like, if you're into history and you're into the Detroit area.
He's such a good listen, man. He's a great talker, very knowledgeable. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, and the production quality on this is top-notch. He's done a really nice job with it. So coming up in just a few, we're going to talk about what's happening on stage around Detroit.
This is the Debrief.
About last week.
All right, Mike, let's talk about what you did last week, because I know you had a big charity show, right?
Boy, yeah, man. Just last evening, Sunday, I put on a tuxedo.
Really?
Man, I was looking sugar sharp.
Did you had to rent that, right? You don't have one of those lying in the back of your
closet? Of course I had to rent. Come on, man. I'm not a tuxedo type of guy. This is the first black tie event I've ever taken part of. It's called the Legacy Civic Fund. And it took place in Saginaw at the Temple Theater, beautiful theater, in their ballroom. And what it is they celebrate the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. It was the 6th annual gala, and they honored several honorees, 4 honorees, and they also gave out a scholarship to a young lady, very deserving young lady, so she can go to college and not have to worry about it. But yeah, they had a poet, they had a gentleman playing a sax, playing some music. Everyone was dressed to the nines, man. It was weird.
So I gotta ask, that's a different kind of room than the type of room that you
normally
vibe,
play,
brother. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, what's it like? Is it harder when everybody's dressed up and when you're following a poet as opposed to
I was the
performing
last performer.
Oh, you had to close.
I closed the show. So here's the juxtaposition. The night before, Saturday, I was in Flint for a show at this place called a Wooden Keg, packed out room in a bar restaurant. I could curse and do whatever I wanted to do, but and do my usual act. But for this one, there were kids in the audience. And there were ministers there, dignitaries.
Yeah.
It was very, very, very formal. And so I had to clean up my act, which is not really a big deal. Although one of my jokes happens to include the fact that Santa Claus isn't real. And
oh, no.
Yeah, the Easter Bunny and the Tooth Fairy. And there were little kids there. I'm like, I hope I didn't ruin their...
As long as you said spoiler alert first, I'm sure it's
alert,
fine.
right. Yeah, that's... Parents were looking at me like, I say, no, I'm sorry. Everyone's growing up today. So yeah, man, it was a beautiful, beautiful event. I hope they ask me back next year. Did pretty well.
Oh, nice.
They liked me.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
I was actually not in town. I went out to Las Vegas for work. I went to the Consumer Electronics
Don't brag,
Show.
man.
I'm
Because it was
saying,
freezing here, dude.
Yes, it was. But you know what? It was raining when we flew into Las Vegas, and that city does not know how to handle rain. No. So not only were streets swamped and closed, and there was flooding in places, but then the next day they actually had a power outage at CES. So there was a whole section that was down
wait a
for
minute.
a couple of hours.
They had a power outage at the electronics show.
Yes, it's that does not work, right?
We don't have backup generators.
It's like, oh no, we're gonna have to look at real reality. We can't do that kind of stuff. But no, the CES was amazing. I mean, you've got the drones there, you've got the robots there, you've got the virtual reality there. So it was really cool.
What was the biggest thing that you saw there? What was the one thing that just stood out, jumped out? Because I saw stripper robots, and I know that wasn't the biggest thing going on.
I did not see stripper robots. No, there were a lot of robots. Frankly, the robots don't feel like they found a purpose yet. I saw robots that were there to keep old people company, and I
don't have like a Rosie from the Jetsons there.
Yeah, no, you do. You have these like sort
a maid robot?
No, but like greeter robots, like promo sort of,
to take over the people from Walmart.
Yes, exactly.
Welcome to Walmart. Beep, bop, bop.
So one of the coolest things I saw was a robot. It's called Keeker, and it's about, I don't know, 1.5 feet tall, and maybe a foot wide. It's shaped like an egg, and it's got this projector in it, so it can show movies, and it integrates with your Netflix or your Spotify or all that. Shows movies up against the wall. The projector can actually tilt up 90 degrees so you can watch movies up on the ceiling as well. But the cool thing is it's kind of like a Roomba, so it can move from room to room to room, and it learns your house. So then you tell it, oh, I want to watch TV in the bedroom, and it'll go into the bedroom, and it will show TV up against the wall.
As it's recording your every breath
sure
while you're
I'm
sleeping.
Sure it is.
I will record and become you. Yeah, dude. Sorry, Keeger.
No, it was pretty cool. That was the one thing that I was like, I would buy this now.
Yeah, but what if you're in the bathroom and a thing comes in there while you're not expecting it? That scared the hell out of me.
What if I want to watch TV while I'm in the bathroom? Like it'll follow me around wherever I go.
That's some creeper stuff, man.
I thought it was cool. So I thoroughly enjoyed CES.
Oh.
Anyway, I'm glad to be back here in Detroit. And the auto show is happening next week.
Yeah, man.
We're going to be talking about that in just a few minutes.
This is the Deep Brief.
On stage.
Let's take a quick look at what's happening in theaters around town. The Detroit Rep Theater has Dauphin Island. Fisher Theater has The Bodyguard. Deborah Cox, the R&B singer.
Yes.
She's going to be in the starring role for that. Meadowbrook Theater in Rochester has Nana's Naughty Knickers. Try saying that 5 times fast. Open Book Theater Company in Wyandotte has Emily. The Ringwald Theater in Ferndale. We've talked about this. I want to see this. This sounds cool. Let the Right One In. Mm-hmm. That was a freaky movie.
Yeah, man.
Both the American version and the foreign version was freaky. I wonder what it would be like as a stage play. The Slipstream Theater Initiative in Ferndale has Tales from the Mitten. This is actually all about Michigan. It's by Michiganders Luna Alexander and Dan Johnson. The Tipping Point Theater in Northville has Every Brilliant Thing. Like I said, we're going to talk to them in just a few minutes. And I also want to call your attention to a couple of speaking events that are going on around town. On Wednesday, January 17th, you remember Steve Johnson? We had him in a couple episodes back. He wrote the beer book hit.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, he's giving a history talk at Downey Brewing Company in Dearborn. That is free.
That's what we're doing Wednesday the 17th.
Yes. You learn all about Detroit beer. And that guy he knows his stuff. So, also, Thursday, January 18th, E.J. Dione, the syndicated columnist for the Washington Post, he's going to speak at the Albert L. Lorenzo Cultural Center in Clinton Township. And Thursday, January 18th, you also have the opening reception for Zap, Pow, Bam, the Art of the Comic Book Cover exhibition that's happening at U of M Dearborn's Alfred Berkowitz Gallery. It's this comic book artist, Jerzy Drozd, who's going to speak there.
Wow.
So if you're into comic book art,
I am. Wow.
That's a cool exhibit to go check out. Coming up in just a moment, we'll talk about the comedy shows happening around town.
Keep up with us. Download our mobile app.
The Deep Brief.
All right, Mike, I got to admit something. I have actually never been to the Detroit Auto Show.
Sinner.
Have you?
Of course, man.
I mean, you have to when you live around here, right?
Listen, it's a law. You have to. You have to know every car every car feature known to man.
Do you know about every car feature?
Yeah, man. Ziploc bucket bag thing that you have in.
All right, well, the Detroit Auto Show is coming to Cobo. It's going to be here the 19th through the 29th. And you've been doing some research. You've been looking up some of the new cars that are coming out, right?
Well, because I drive a couple of cars. I have a lease.
Oh, you do?
On a Ford Escape, which is just a pimp player car. And I also have a 2012 Ford Fusion that I drive.
Yep.
And
so you're
that's to ward off all of the women that try to come at me. They're like, ugh, you drive
Were you
a
like
Fusion.
a Ford family growing up? Did you feel that
GM.
pressure? Oh, okay. But
GM.
American, but one of the big three around here.
Yeah.
All right, because I drive a Hyundai Elantra. I'm afraid
a lot of pressure
somebody's
here.
going to beat me up or something, you know?
No one even recognizes a Hyundai as a car, so...
I might as well be walking.
Was that a pogo stick?
All right, tell me about some of the cars you're excited about that are going to be coming out this year.
Well, my friend, the 2019 Chevy Silverado is being redesigned, man. and it has some pretty cool headlights. It almost, if you kind of block the bottom part of the car, it almost looks like a Camaro. It's pretty dope how they do it.
Yeah, I saw that. I mean, those are tiny for a big truck.
Yeah, they moved away from those big honking lights to those like very slim and trim light. A lot of grill.
Sleek, I think is the word.
Sleek.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. What
yeah,
else?
man. Ford Ranger is back. It's coming back, a mid-sized pickup. It was huge back in the 80s and 90s. You know, everybody had one of those things, along with the Suzuki Samurai. That's what we used to drive, or the Splash.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a manly car. So that seems to be making a comeback, which is cool, mid-sized pickup. And they compare it to like the Chevy Colorado and the Toyota Tacoma, which are very popular cars in that range. I'm all about this SUV, Lamborghini Urus.
Lamborghini's making an SUV?
An SUV.
Wow.
That thing's going to go like 700,000 horsepower and like 3 million miles an hour.
That's got to be a pricey SUV.
Here's my thing. I'm always skeptical about people that buy those type of cars, so expensive cars, and driving them on Michigan roads. Because it's cool when you're in it until you hit a pothole. Then you don't look cool on the side of the road.
What happened? There was snow on the ground when I went to Vegas. There was like 150-degree a day, I think, while I was gone.
Yeah.
And everything melted. And then I came back and it was snowing again. But there's like 50 million potholes all of a sudden.
That's how Michigan works. That's how Michigan works. Listen, man, our season is construction and winter. Those are our two seasons. And that's true. Well, this is similar to a Porsche SUV. It's going to debut, actually, at the auto show, and it's $200,000. Easy.
Yeah, if I hit a pothole with that, I think I'd cry.
Well, if you're that 20-year-old that won the Powerball, yeah, you can buy a couple of those. 2019, another truck, the Ram 1500. Now, the Rams are pretty popular. You know, Dennis Leary in his commercial will tell you how great the Rams are. I'm not too sold, but it's the first redesign in 10 years, and it's a stiff competition with the Chevy and Ford. So, yeah, check it out. Check that out. Rolls Royce, the Phantom.
That's a cool name.
Yeah, Rolls Royce Phantom. That's coming back, redesigned. So the Phantom looked a lot like, or rather, the 300.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chrysler 300 looked a lot like the Phantom, and people would, or the Bentley rather. So people would like get those things confused and all, but the Phantom is a little bit higher price. Yeah, man.
How much higher price?
Only $450,000. Yeah. And my birthday's coming up, so you can get one for me, right?
Yeah, I think you could fix all the potholes for $450,000.
And we have another Jeep Cherokee. That's it. More conservative front end.
You don't sound excited about that.
I have my Jeep Cherokee story, which I won't say on air because this is radio friendly. We'll talk about that off air.
All right. We'll talk about that off air. All right, so maybe I should go. Maybe I should do my first auto show.
It's great to go down there, see all the new cars, all the people, the models, the spokespersons and all that. It's a cool vibe, man.
The one thing I am wondering, and I've heard other people have this conversation, at CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, like I said, I was just there in Vegas. The cars have taken over in the last 5 years. I mean, they've really, now that there are so many electronics in the dashboard, they've been showcasing a lot there. And I wonder if that makes these two shows start to compete a little bit. I mean, it's not like they're showing next year's model.
I wouldn't be surprised if they combined a bit, because with, for instance, I was in a newer Cadillac, and it had the rear camera. And usually on cars, it's either in your dash,
right?
A little TV, or there's a little tiny view in in my Fusion. There's a little tiny view of your rear camera, what you're seeing behind you. Well, in the Cadillac, the entire mirror becomes your rear view mirror, and it's a huge swath behind you, so you can't hit anything behind you. If you do, you're horrible. You're a horrible driver, and I think that's where we're gravitating towards.
See, and I will say that I care more about what's on the inside of the car than I do on the outside.
Absolutely, because the cockpit is important. You spend a lot of time.
That's where I spend all my time. I don't even know what color my car is. So
no, my car is my office.
Right.
And as a comedian, I'm constantly driving from show to show, all over the state, all over the country, really. And comfort is important, my leg room, my head room, but the cockpit, because I'm controlling everything from there, the buttons and the knobs. I memorize those things.
Right.
So when I go from one car to the other car, it's a complete relearn.
Right. My cigarette lighter no longer charges my phone with the USB cord. I almost sold the car that day. So I was like, I'm out. Done. Forget it.
I don't smoke.
All right. Coming up in just a moment, there is a new comedy about depression at the Tipping Point Theater in Northville, and we'll talk to those folks about it.
Welcome to the D. Breathe.
Breathe. Funny stuff.
All right, Mike, what's going on in the comedy clubs?
Well, at Big Tommy's in Novi, Ken Sherwood is there this weekend. Also this weekend at Mark Ridley's Comedy Castle, Sean Donnelly stopping in. Ann Arbor Comedy Showcase, my buddy from Chicago, Dwayne Kennedy. He works with W. Kamau Bell on his old show on FXX. And he's also doing some work this year on his show on CNN, The United Shades of America.
Oh, yeah.
Hugely funny guy. Worked with him last year. Go catch him if you can out at the Ann Arbor Comedy Showcase this weekend at Punchline Comedy Lounge in Southfield. K-Dub live. Not dead.
No.
You don't want dead K-Dub. If you're going to have K-Dub, you want him live. He'll be there this weekend. And at the Holly Hotel, Russ Brown, local favorite, along with my girl, Tanya Murray.
Oh, yeah. I like Tanya.
Man, Tanya.
I actually met her opening up for you at a show in Canada once. She's great.
She's opened for me many, many times. We just worked this past weekend up in Flint at the Wooden Keg, man. I strongly recommend, if you don't go see all of those shows, go see the one at the Holly Hotel. It's a great one.
All right, we'll talk about what's happening in Detroit sports in just a moment.
This is the D. Breathe.
All right, Mike, you've been to the Tipping Point Theater.
I have.
In Northville.
I have. My daughter's performed there.
Oh, really? What'd she perform?
I don't know, man. I'm a dad. I don't pay attention to that stuff.
There's a video cassette with it somewhere, you know.
Sorry.
No, it's a cool little, black box theater there in Northville. I have not spent much time in Northville, but
You should. It's a beautiful little town, man.
really just go
Cute
and
little
just
town.
hang out.
Yeah,
and,
man.
all right, I got to do that. Anyway, they've got a new production opening up. It's called Every Brilliant Thing. It's a comedy about depression. And so
Wait.
Yes,
What?
Yes, it's a comedy about depression. Depression is funny, dude. You just gotta.
How do you look at it?
Right. It's like one of those David Letterman jokes. It's like not funny the first 17 times, but by the time you get to the 18th, it's hilarious. Anyway, I sat down with James Kuhl. He is the producing artistic director at the Tipping Point Theater in Northville, and he's also starring in it. Now, they're actually, the way they're doing it is they've also got a woman named Catherine Banks who is starring in it on a number of nights, and so you can actually see the same play done different ways.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, by different
Okay.
actors or actresses. So I sat down with James, and first of all, I had to ask him about the history of this theater, the Tipping Point Theater. Here's what he told me.
Well, it was opened in 2007, and the way that it started was there was an individual in Northville that started doing or wanted to bring professional theater to Northville and the surrounding area, and so they started doing a show or two through the Parks and Rec, and they put a story together in the Northville Record, that's the local paper, and two individuals, Chuck Gatica, who was on Channel 4 for a very long time, the meteorologist, as well as another local Northvillian, Chuck Lapham. The two of them basically saw the article, got together, and they ended up becoming like the business side of it, and along with this local resident who was more of the artistic side. And so they came together, and 5 months later, we had a professional theater company in Northville. It happened incredibly quickly that everything came together. And since then, it's been going like gangbusters. We entertain now. We entertain up to about 15,000 people every year.
You know meteorologist Chuck Gatica?
I do.
You do? See, this is one of the problems with me being
Cuddle
a cord
alert.
cutter.
Tonight is cuddle alert weather.
I don't. Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah, man, when it's cold out, cuddle alert. That's when all the babies get made. I mean, I'm just saying.
All right. Well, I also asked James about the production that they're opening up, about Every Brilliant Thing. Here's what he told me about it.
This particular show follows a list that is started by a 7-year-old boy to help his mom. And it's a list of everything that's brilliant about the world, everything that's worth living for. And this list ends up following him throughout his life, appearing at times serendipitously when he needs it the most. So it's easily the funniest play about depression you're going to find. But actually, that's misleading because it's not about depression. The show is about hope. The show is about being inspired and finding hopeful, worthwhile things everywhere that you look.
It's the funniest play about depression you're going to see all year.
I don't think he sold that very well. He has to have a wacky voice when he does the funniest play about depression you'll ever see. You know, that would sell us. Oh, wow, I got to go see that. No, I'm going to go see it because it sounds great.
No, it sounds good. I think maybe you get free meds when you when you go to the show. No, like I said, Catherine Banks is also performing in it, and I asked him a little bit about how that works.
The play is written not specifically for a male actor. The original performer happened to be a British man, but the way that Duncan Macmillan has written it, he puts in there that this is a universal play. You can cast a man, you can cast a woman, you can cast any nationality, any race, and the play works. And so part of the reason why we've done it is one in part to show the universality of it, but also two, that if you enjoyed seeing the show with one performer, you have the option to come back and see a completely different performance with another actor.
I think that's a cool idea because I would like to see how two completely different people
interpret that.
Yeah,
man.
I would think. I wonder if they watch each other or if not because they don't want to be influenced or they want to try and do different.
Like
things
if the woman
with it.
comes on and says, "Hey," reads her voice, right? Or the guy goes, "Hey."
Right. No, I'm not worried about that so much. But I think it would be cool to see, kind of then contrast the two and see how they both do it. While I was there, I asked James what the theater scene is like in the Metro Detroit area as a whole. Here's what he said.
The reality is that we have over 250 different theaters in Michigan, and a vast majority of them are located in southeastern Michigan. I mean, if you head up to Lansing, you have the Williamston Theater, who has, I believe, been there for 12 years. In Chelsea's, there's the Purple Rose Theater, and I think they're on 25. They're way up there as well. Now downtown Detroit, you have the Detroit Public Theater, which is I believe going into its third season there, and you have Meadowbrook, up on Oakland University, the campus up there, that they've been there for 40 plus years. So the Jewish Ensemble Theater in West Bloomfield as well. We have a really strong, theater community that exists here in southeastern Michigan, and that's the union houses. There are a lot of really great cutting edge non-equity theaters out there that are doing some really, really fantastic work. Open Book Theater is doing fantastic work. The Ringwald in Ferndale. These are really, really great companies that are doing edgy stuff and developing the talent pool that that all of us pulls from.
So go out and support local theater.
You should.
Show them some
I was
love.
almost in theater. I was asked to do a musical about a year and a half ago.
Can you sing?
Oh, yeah. I have a great voice.
Really?
Come on, man.
Lay some on me.
You'll never find
That's not bad.
as long as... Of course it's not bad, 'cause I told you I could sing. But the musical was Full Monty.
Oh, and you just didn't want to get naked?
I was a little afraid. A little scared.
I understand.
Yes.
I can't sing either, so I don't know what I'd be more afraid of.
So wait a minute. I can sing. You're not afraid to get naked.
Right.
Maybe we can do this.
We could do this together.
Throw my voice.
I'll be your body double. We can do it. Well, I asked James what was up next for the Tipping Point Theater, and he said he's what they've got on the docket.
The next play is called Ripcord. It's by David Lindsay Abaire, a more famous contemporary playwright. Very funny. It's about two mature ladies that are living in an assisted living home, and the two of them end up essentially creating a pretty funny feud between the two of them. And throughout the course of the play, they play practical jokes on each other in trying to win the feud.
All right, so Every Brilliant Thing opens this weekend at the Tipping Point Theater in Northville. If you want all the details, you can go to tippingpointtheater.com.
The deep breathe. The deep breathe.
Sports Report.
All right, Mike, what's going on in the world of sports?
Well, my friend, the Detroit Pistons, they're going to dip out of town to play the Raptors up at T-Dot. That's what the hipsters call Toronto.
T-Dot?
Yeah, T-Dot. There are all kinds of nicknames, man, but it's called T-Dot, trust me. Before they come home to start 4 straight. So they're going to start out with the Wizards and the Nets when they come back from Toronto. Our beloved Red Wings, they are at home against the Carolina Hurricanes. Then they go on the road for a quick jog to New Jersey before returning home to start a 3-game homestand, starting with the Philadelphia Flyers. MSU, Spartans, number 4 ranked last weekend before Michigan came to town and put a whooping on them.
Oops.
Hurt them bad. It's probably going to drop them in the polls a little bit. And they'll try to get back on track as they take on the Indiana Hoosiers at home. And then they go to Illinois to play the Fighting Illini because they fight.
Who doesn't?
They're from Illinois. I don't know. U of M basketball, they're pretty hyped up after beating the state. They're going to kick up their heels for a bit before they take on the Nebraska Cornhuskers over in Nebraska, and they come home and play the Rutgers Scarlet Knights at the Chrysler Center. And hey, we talked about this a little while ago. I think it was last month, but the Lexus Velodrome.
Yeah,
the
this is
$4
cool.
million Lexus Velodrome opened last weekend in Detroit. Again, it's the second indoor velodrome in the United States. It features a bicycle track, walking and running track, and weight training area.
I might have to get my spandex out just to go.
No, don't do that. Don't do that. You're going to show up in like cut off short
Right, well,
jeans.
you know, the biking gear.
With the pockets.
I got the gear.
You're going to cut your jeans with the pockets
It's
hanging
only
out.
15 years old. I'm sure it still fits.
All right, Joe Dirt. And this thing was paid for by an angel donor.
Ooh.
Yeah. So if an angel donor is out there and wants to pay for this podcast
Yes.
or adopt a 48-year-old black man,
We'll let you bike around the podcasting
you
table.
can bike around as long as you want. Just drop $4 million off. Let's take this thing global.
All right, I want to go check out that velodrome. Coming
Yeah,
up in
same
just
here.
a bit, we'll talk about the concerts that are coming to town.
This is the D.
Detroit.
This is the D.
Breathe.
All right, Mike, we have a very special guest in studio today. She is the host of Essential Music on 101.9 WDET, Detroit Public Radio. You can hear her every Saturday and Sunday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Welcome, Delisi.
It is my pleasure to be here.
Oh, we're so happy to have you. Thank you for
welcome.
coming in.
You guys
And,
are turning the tables on me.
I know, right? Normally you're the host. Normally
Yeah.
you're the one interviewing.
It kind of occurred to me that I don't even know what kind of an interview subject I am because I've been asking the questions for
You're
such a
about to
long
find
time.
out.
I know, right? I know.
And Delisi, this is your life.
Well, explain the show for people who may not be familiar with it.
So the interesting thing about, and I won't go through This Is My Life, my radio career, and bore you to death, but the interesting thing is I actually started at WDET. So that was my first radio job, and I worked there from 1983 to 1995. And my first air shift was 3 to 6 a.m. on Saturday morning, which means I could do no damage.
It's the overnight
Right,
shift.
right.
Yeah, that's where all DJs
It's like
start.
the worst overnight. I mean, it wasn't even 2 to 6. It was 3
Yeah,
to
that's
6.
pretty brutal.
People were either had too much to drink by then or were asleep. So it was great because that's where I learned to do this. And I became a music director, a music librarian, because WDET had the most impressive music library in the city of Detroit.
Really?
Yeah, because we played all of these different formats. So it was rock and it was jazz and bluegrass and folk and blues. And so I learned all those genres of music because I had to work in the library and I was surrounded by the music all the time.
Was this a vinyl collection that they had there?
It was at that time, yeah. And we had a fire up there, so it burned a bunch of the stuff that we had, not everything. So there had been a fire up there, which prompted our move. We've moved again since then. But I ended up working, I thought I was living the high life when I was like 10 to midnight on Friday night or something. I was like, I really hit the big time. And eventually I ended up doing afternoons there. And it was a freeform show. I used to play all those genres I just mentioned. I used to play all of those.
Right.
And try to find a way to make it all work. And, that's the beauty of public broadcasting is that there are still these these places where people who know music and love music can put together these shows that really are kind of a journey for an adventurous music listener. And that's becoming less and less, as we get more and more homogenized and how, broadcast radio becomes.
Well, and you mean that in the public radio space as well as the commercial, or?
Certainly less so in the public space, but a lot of times, those shows are, they're planned, very much planned, and there's computers involved, but it is certainly more adventurous. But I still today, and so, I stayed there till 1995, and I had, then I had a daily shift, and I was the music director there.
So were you a selector jockey? Because I was a selector jockey at one point in my career.
What's that?
Yeah, I know.
I'm not a radio guy, man.
Did you use Selector? Selector's the music scheduling software that you would use to kind of. I hate to tell you this, the DJs don't pick the music for the most part.
What?
Well,
Dun, dun, dun.
and so Selector was what you would schedule the music on.
I didn't use Selector at WDET. I would literally curate every show every
Really?
day. I produced every show. It was like a 3-hour show
She's
every
special.
day. Yeah.
So she's a baller in the radio pantheon.
And I was just a corporate stooge.
But I did.
I push button.
You know what though? When I left WDET, I went into commercial radio because, and people thought I had totally lost my mind, but I was in a space where, I never went from one job to the next unless I wanted to learn something new. And so if I was in a situation where I thought I learned everything I thought I could learn and I was challenged to the limit by everyone around me, I would leave. And it was never about money, and it was never, people would write about, I would get written up in the paper when I would leave to go to another job, and the assumption was that I was always making more money, and that was not the case. I would just get to, a natural conclusion for where I was, and if another opportunity came along, especially for me to stay in Detroit, which I wanted to do, then I would move on to that. And so when I went to the River, it was a commercial station. It was a AAA station, still pretty adventurous, but that's when I learned about Selector. And I learned Selector.
But she's a dual threat, so she knows that. And
right.
Yeah.
I'd like to say that when I changed jobs in radio, it was very different. There was always a cardboard box involved, and me taking everything in my desk drawer and putting it in there.
It's funny when I worked at the River in Canada. So 89X was there. There were 4 stations, and we were kind of like in this bunker on Olette. And there was 580 Memories, and that played like Frank Sinatra and Tony Bennett. And then there was AM 800, which it was like the WJR of Windsor. Yeah, of course, that. And then 89X and the River, 93.1, the River. And it was so funny because the Cam Gardner, who worked at AM 800 for a long time, he was the seasoned broadcaster. He looked at all of us youngsters one day and he said, "I want you to remember this. If they say to you, come on upstairs and bring all your stuff." You should get a little concerned. Right. So we were all in this basement, that's where all our offices were, and then the studios were upstairs. But that was an interesting situation, too, because I had to go to Canada every day.
Oh, wow.
To work. But it was still the Detroit market.
Right.
How did you learn the language?
Hey, I learned it.
Did you have to play a certain percentage of Canadian music?
Content. We called it CanCon.
Yeah. Do you know about this rule?
No.
Oh, yeah. Explain the...
Well, it was different for a border city like Detroit because they still wanted you to be able to compete in an American market. And so our Canadian content was less. I think it was 17%, but around Canada it was 30% at the time. And so the challenge would become getting enough Canadian content that was new that fit what you were doing.
Right.
And so 89X had a heck of a time. They didn't have...
That's why, Our Lady Peace is still in heavy rotation over there.
Right.
That band hasn't been cool for 25 years.
They played every time Our Lady Peace put out something. It was a great.
It's like, thank God.
All right. Percentages are up.
It's like, can we get away with Avril Lavigne?
When Alanis Morissette put out Jagged Little Pill, it was like, oh thank God, for the Bare Naked Ladies and Alanis Morissette. Oh my gosh, we played that stuff like crazy. But it was still, we still wanted to compete in the American market, and so that we did that. We had offices actually right where you guys are. The American office was over here in Bingham Farms, and then we had our sales offices in Windsor and sales offices over here, and it was just a very interesting situation. But I had working papers so that I could cross the border, and mercifully, this was before 9/11, which changed everything. But it was always harder to get back into the United States.
Yeah,
always
sure.
more difficult. I'll never forget. And you get to that point, you just want to get home. So you put up with the insults,
right?
Because you just want to get back into the United States. And I'll never forget. I was crossing the border, and this elderly gentleman who was at the gate said to me, "So where do you work?" And I told him, and he just looked at me and he said, "Oh, do they let you read the weather?" And I was like, I just thought two wrongs don't make a right. Two wrongs don't make a right. I just want to go home. I just want to go home. And it would be all kinds of crazy questions like that. Yeah.
Wow. All right. Well, stick around for a couple minutes because we want to hear more about your music career, but we got to get into the concert calendar first.
This is the D
Concert calendar.
And this, of course, is a slower time of year for the concerts, but we still got some good shows going on. On Wednesday, January 17th, Lana Del Rey is going to be at the Little Caesars Arena, or as you like to call it,
It's the Hara, the Hot and Ready.
Yeah, this
Hot
is
and Ready
his,
Arena.
He's trying to. Can you help him out? You've got a bigger audience than we do. He's trying to make that take off. Can you
let me know? Wouldn't the Canadians grasp all hold of that? I mean, come on.
You know what? Your voice, you're a little hard to ignore.
I'm just saying. It's going to be the Hot and Ready.
Yeah.
The Squirrel Nut Zippers are going to be at El Club, I guess.
El Club.
Yeah, I always want to pronounce it. It's too many years in Canada or in California.
Yeah.
That's Wednesday, January 17th as well. On the 18th, that's Thursday, you've got Maze featuring Frankie Beverly at the soundboard. On Friday, January 19th, you've got Marshmello, who's going to be at the Masonic Temple.
I just found out about this guy, my 9-year-old.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she told me about him yesterday.
This is another one of those DJs with a funny looking, fake head, right? Yeah, that's a big thing.
It's a thing.
Yeah. Never seen that before, dead mouse.
I'm going to go with Lego Man. Also, Friday, January 19th, G-Love and Special Sauce going to be at St. Andrews Hall.
Oh, yeah.
On Sunday, January 21st, the Isley Brothers are going to be at the Soundboard, and Destroyer is going to be at the Majestic. Monday, January 22nd, Shakira is going to be at Little Caesars Arena. I remember her when she was like the Latin Alanis Morissette before any of her albums were in English.
But is she Hara proven?
Is she Hara? I don't know. I mean,
I've never interviewed.
That's a huge arena.
You've never interviewed Shakira?
Mm-mm.
All right.
She'll fill that place, I think.
Really?
I think she'll do well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then Tuesday, January 23rd, two cellos are going to be at Fox Theater. This is a rescheduled
Those guys are
show.
so cool.
From October, yeah?
They are so cool. They do a version of Thunderstruck that is so unbelievably cool. The video's great.
Where did I see that? Was that like America's Got Talent or something that they were on? I saw that somewhere.
I don't know where they were, but the video's really worth watching.
All right, cool.
Very cool, yeah.
So go check that out. Also, some big news. Jack White has announced that he's got a new album that's going to be dropping on March 23rd. It'll be called Boarding House Reach. That's a guy you must have interviewed.
I have not interviewed
You
him.
have not?
I just interviewed, as a matter of fact, Ben Blackwell, his archivist for the White Stripes, who is quite fascinating to talk to. But Jack White held him. He was holed up in a little tiny apartment in Nashville with no distractions while he made this album.
Wow.
And used the equipment he used when he was 15 years old.
I interviewed him once, like 15 years ago when I was in Seattle, and he yelled at me.
Rightfully so. That'll teach you to talk to Mr. White like that.
I need some interview tips, if you could.
I should do that for my jokes. Just hold myself up in a small apartment.
Yes, you should. Also, Kid Rock had to change the name of his tour. He had named it Greatest Show on Earth, and there were legal problems from the circus.
No.
Folks. Yeah, so who saw that coming?
Debrief.
Want more? Text the word Detroit to the number 444-999.
All right, we are here with Delisi. She is the host of Essential Music on WDET. And we've been talking about, we talked about Jack White and Kid Rock and some of these guys. I mean, talk about how the music scene has evolved since you've been here in Detroit.
I've been in Detroit my whole life. Detroit is known around the world for more than Motown. And I'll go back just for a real quick second. There was a legendary record store in Detroit called Sam's Jams.
Yeah.
You remember Sam's
Yes.
Jams, right?
Yes,
So I worked
yes.
at the original store, and then when we moved, and when I was at Sam's Jams, and I was talking to somebody about this. I was talking to Ben Blackwell, as a matter of fact, about this the other day. And I remember working on I remember it like it was yesterday, and I've forgotten a lot of stuff, but a bunch of Japanese businessmen walked into Sam's Jams, and they went right to the rare Motown collection we had, because we would collect, for people that were collectors. It was all vinyl at the time. They bought every single thing we had. I mean, every piece of rare Motown vinyl we had. They just cleaned the place out. And it hit me because I thought, this music is so revered around the world. And Detroit, it's synonymous with Detroit, of course, but so is techno music, and the fact that it was born here. And actually, it still, in my opinion, remains bigger around the world than it does here in Detroit, although movement does prove, each year that the following is incredible in Detroit as well. But for the longest time, all of those guys, Carl Craig, Juan Atkins, Derek May, and Kevin Saunderson, they were known around the world. They were of godlike status when it came to techno music. So it's been incredible to watch that form continue to grow. And then, we are at a point now where we have watched rock and roll and all of its offshoots kind of like grow up. So the people that invented rock and roll, for all intents and purposes, have lived their entire lives. We've watched their careers, their entire lives. Unfortunately, we're starting to lose a lot of these incredible artists. But Detroit has just continued when it comes to, you watch the White Stripes and the influence that they've had, and the fact that Jack White still spends time here and invests in this community, I think is really quite impressive. And so music of all different genres still live and breathe in this town in such a big way. This town is driven in many ways by its music.
Do you see small record labels in Detroit, or do you see, interesting little projects like that?
Oh, yeah. One label in particular was started by Jarrett Coral, who was 16 at the time, and he just celebrated his 5-year anniversary with his own label called Jet Plastic Recordings.
And it's the first time he can drink, I guess.
Yeah, you guys should definitely interview him, because everybody knows who he is, and he started this label by himself, and now he's got all of these releases coming out, and he's just, he speaks to the entrepreneurial spirit. There's no doubt about it.
Right.
But also that feeling like when you're a kid, like you can do when you could do anything, and you've got the energy to do it as well. And he is somebody that is really great to watch. And you should also, I can tell you how to program your show. Here I go. I'm producing your show. I apologize. It's
You have experience, so,
it's very impolite.
We're more than
to
happy
do that.
to take suggestions.
It's very
Mike,
impolite.
write this down.
Yeah, I got it.
But Archer Pressing Plant, they were pressing vinyl the entire way along. Now they're backed up beyond belief. They can't even keep up. And Jarrett Coral got a lot of those records pressed there. And of course, now you've got Third Man, who is pressing vinyl like crazy. And the other thing that they're doing at Third Man, obviously a much bigger label, but they are, being really active about going to a lot of these bands in Detroit who played at the clubs for many, many years, and getting those recordings to basically archive them so that this musical history of Detroit is preserved. So it's just it's always been an exciting town for music. And on a national level, record companies used to come to Detroit because they knew they could break their artists here. They would bypass New York and Los Angeles, which is where everybody would think they would do it, and they could come to Detroit and break their artists. And that was an exciting thing for me as a music director, not just to be on the air, but as a music director. It was incredibly exciting because they would bring all these new artists and do showcases here.
And I can say this. I mean, I was a music director too, and there's nothing better than to be able to say I broke a band, meaning that I played it first or was one of the early ones, and to be a champion on a record, and then to see that band go on to be a big deal.
No question about it. And that happened in Detroit a lot, whether it was rock or AAA or modern rock or whatever. that would happen routinely because they knew that Detroit would take chances on artists. And at one point, we had 4 rock stations here. I mean,
this is a rock. I mean, they don't call it Detroit Rock City for nothing.
Oh, no,
this is a rock town, right?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, everybody's kind of got it in their DNA. You have rock music, but you've also got, this soulful Motown that's in our DNA as well. But, at that time in radio, it was so exciting to work in radio because the competition was so fierce, and competition is great for the listener.
Yeah.
It makes everybody better when you are all really duking it out there.
Right.
I miss old-fashioned
exciting.
radio wars. Like,
Yes.
I mean,
LOZ
Oh, yeah.
and RIF.
and what were some of the things that
yeah.
you saw in the trenches when there were radio wars? I mean, did you have these battles over concerts, like when a band came to town or stuff like that?
I would, from the distance, I would see the rock stations go through it, and it was hilarious to watch because they were serious about it. And they were all going after the same listeners. At the river was sort of a step aside from WDET. So at WDET, I could play anything. I could play Miles Davis next to The Clash, next to, Bluegrass with Bill Monroe, and I could totally get away with it. When I went to the river, of course, it was not quite that crazy. But still, we were one of the stations in town that would break all these artists. And the thing that would upset us sometimes was we would take all the chances to lay the groundwork for an artist. And then it would feel safe, quote unquote safe, for other stations to play this artist, and then they would get them to play, their giant show when we did sort of laid all the foundation
I've been
for
there
that kind
too.
of stuff. You know how that goes.
Yes, that's
You're like, excuse me.
Right. Or when the band crosses pop, like to the top 40 station that started on, the cool station in town. Yeah.
Well, hold on.
But I miss all of that.
You've been around so many genres of music.
Yeah.
What is your favorite type of music to listen to? You have to have a favorite, right?
Well, the crazy thing is I studied classical in college, so I got my degree in music. And I am a perfect case of people who are not great musicians become disc jockeys. I'm a classic case. I mean, I did okay in school, and I'm, now looking back, it was a luxury to go and study music. And I probably have a different vantage point when I'm talking to people about it because I studied it so much. But there's something about all of it that I really love. When I hear an incredible bluegrass player, I'm still blown away. But when I hear a great rock guitarist or an incredible vocalist, no matter what they're singing, I still really love it. And so, I've been out there to see AC/DC, and I've been there to see Miles Davis, and I love it all. I really do love it all. But I probably love, if I had to pick a vocalist, it would probably be Marvin Gaye.
Ooh,
So
I
if-
like that choice.
Yeah, so if you said to me, what's your favorite, if I had to name one, he would epitomize for me. It's not just how incredible of a singer he was, but the timelessness of his voice, that it still resonates today, that you could listen to a Marvin Gaye song and not say, oh, this sounds so 60s or whatever. It doesn't matter. And that he really took a lot of chances. When he recorded, I heard it through the grapevine, Berry Gordy refused to release it because he hated it. And Marvin Gaye sang in a falsetto through that whole song. If you'll listen to it differently now, of course, he sang in a falsetto through that entire song, and he wouldn't release it. So that song was recorded 3 times. It was recorded by Smokey Robinson and the Miracles. It was recorded by, then it was recorded by Marvin Gaye, not released. Then Gladys Knight recorded it, and she had a huge hit with it. And it was a disc jockey, and I can't remember the name of I can't remember the station call letters, that took Marvin Gaye's I Heard It Through the Grapevine and started playing it, and forced Berry Gordy's hand.
Wow.
Because everybody heard it, listened to it, and of course it was a million seller and one of the most enduring songs ever recorded.
Yeah, there's a video on YouTube of just his vocals for that.
I've heard
that
it, yeah.
is scary. It's scary how incredible it is because you hear the echoes of it and all that, and it's not cleaned up at all. It's beautiful, and it's like, yeah, okay, yeah, I can see why this is a hit. It wouldn't be like me singing it,
Well, What about more recent stuff? Do you have any favorite albums from last year, or else albums that you're looking forward to in 2018?
Please don't say Rihanna.
Here is the band for you guys to watch. And I love them. And they are called The War and Treaty. And I started playing them, I guess maybe it's been over a year now. And they are a husband-wife duo. And together they sound so incredibly stunning. And so here's what happened. I'll tell you a quick story. You got time for a quick story?
Yeah, sure.
I'm loaded with them. All right, so this is a quick story about them. So I hear the song and I'm like, oh my gosh, who are these people? Well, turns out they live in Albion, Michigan. They had moved there. You know who they are, right?
Yes.
And so I started playing them on the air, and I get a message via Twitter from Tanya Trotter. She's the female vocalist. She says, oh my gosh, thank you for playing our song. I said, I really love you guys. Can you come in and do a performance? And so they blow everybody away. They are incredible. And their story is that Tanya was signed to a $2 million record deal that she walked away from. She walked into Puff Daddy. Is that what he calls himself now? Puff Daddy.
P. Diddy, Puff Daddy,
P. Diddy, whatever. Okay, she walks into his office and says, I can't sing this stuff that you want me to sing. I want out of my deal. And he lets her out of her deal. Meanwhile, Michael Trotter decides to enlist in the Army, thinking they basically said, you're not going to get deployed, right? So he finishes his training. He gets deployed to Iraq. So Michael gets over there. He has never been around white people his whole life. And so his commander is a white guy. And Michael was having a hard time. So they're in Iraq. He wasn't expecting to go. And this commander said to him, I think you should go and play this piano. And there was a piano in the basement of one of Saddam Hussein's palaces, and it was the only thing not destroyed. This entire palace was destroyed. The only thing not destroyed was this piano. So Michael Trotter would go and learn how to play and write songs and sing on this piano that belonged to Saddam Hussein. His commander gets killed. He writes a song for him to sing at the memorial. It is so beautiful. This man's voice is so incredible. And he then, throughout the rest of his military career, goes to all of these memorial services and sings for all of these fallen soldiers.
Wow.
He comes back to the United States, and he's singing outside somewhere. And Tanya is across this field and hears his voice. And as she describes it, she's in her heels trying to get to the stage where this man is singing and says to him, you and I should be singing together. So they start singing together, then get married. And so fast forward to I hear their song. Then I work with Don Was and Ishmael Ahmed on the Concert of Colors, which is such an incredible, one of the best events Detroit does to celebrate music diversity from around the world. So I'm on a conference call with Don and Ishmael, and we're like, what bands should we get? And this was to celebrate 1967, so they were songs of rebellion. And I said, you should watch this video, The War and Treaty. And the first thing Don Was said to me on the call was, get The War and Treaty. I said, okay, so call these guys up. And at this point, by the way, they had no manager. I was like one of the people that they would ask questions to. I'd say, well, I wouldn't do that, and I would do that, and I wouldn't do that. And they said to me at one point, can you be our manager? And I said, you know what? I'm only willing to screw up a career. That'd be mine. I'm not going to be responsible. And I have so much respect for them. So anyway, comes time for the Concert of Colors rehearsals, right? And that happens in the basement in this auditorium at the Arab American Museum. In comes Michael and Tanya. And now the only people, like there's no audience there. There's like a handful of people in the audience, and then there's the band that they're going to perform with. And so they walk in, and I know the band is going, what is up with these two? They just didn't know what to make of them. And their song was Respect Yourself by the Staple Singers, which was a brilliant choice. And they get up there, And you can see the band. Now, all of these guys in this band are seasoned musicians. They work with Don Was. Don Was knew what they sounded like, and they're up there, and they blow everybody away to the point where people were coming up to me going, where did you find these guys, So, am I running long here? No. Okay, good. So, fast forward to the night of the performance, and they were second from last. So, everybody had performed except one artist. And, after the rehearsal, Tanya said to me, she told me she was nervous, which I couldn't imagine because she's got the voice from heaven. And I just said, Tanya, everybody in that audience is going to want you to do your best and sound amazing, and they're going to cheer you on. So just go for it. Have fun out there. You and Michael are incredible. She goes, okay. So they come out there and they sing "Respect Yourself," and something happened that nobody expected. Is that every person in that audience was on their feet screaming for them. Wow. And for like a full minute, because I went out there because I'm supposed to interview them, and I'm like, oh, I'm way too early here. Nobody needs me. And people were blown away by them. So they were so emotional. They couldn't believe this outpouring. And that night started to change everything. And before you edit this piece, I think they will have a major label deal. You are going to see them on the late night shows before too long. I am almost certain of it. And I can't say what label. I think I know which one they're going to end up going to, but they're going to be on a major label. And they are already going to be they're on Bonnaroo and Coachella and all that. They're booked at all these different things.
And that's the greatest feeling for somebody in your position, isn't it? To be there early and to see a band and to believe in a band and then watch them go on to do great things.
It is. And you know that feeling too. And the thing is, I just wish them nothing but the success because their talent is immense. They are enormously talented. And it's kind of like when you hear a band or you experience music that is undeniable, even if it's not your favorite kind of music. Right. There are artists that you can't deny their talent, and that's where the Warren Treaty fall. And the two of them, independently, they could be successful solo artists. There's no doubt about it. But together, it is really mind-blowing. And so this is going to be something to watch. And I'm thoroughly enjoying watching their star rise the way it has.
Oh, well, that's awesome.
It's great, yeah.
Nice.
Warren Treaty. We'll go check it out.
I mean, I stumbled across them a few weeks ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in one of their songs, and I was like, I can get with this.
Nice.
So.
Oh, yeah. They're amazing.
Well, Delisi, thank you so much for taking my
pleasure.
by. This is fantastic.
Awesome.
Absolutely my pleasure.
And if people want to check out the show, it's Essential Music. It's on 101.9 WDET every Saturday and Sunday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m.
Yes.
And can they follow you on social media and stuff like that as well?
There are 2 pages dedicated to Essential Music on Facebook, and it's Delisi on Instagram and Twitter, Delisi Music. Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you for stopping by.
Thank you. Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Awesome sauce.
The Brief.
Hard to believe, man. That's another show.
Man, that was an action-packed, exciting show.
Yeah, it was.
And Velodrome talk.
Yes. And we've got your Boblo Island quiz.
Yes,
we're gonna get to that in just a moment.
I was trying to delay. I don't know if I'm ready, bro.
All right, we'll get to that in just a moment. But before we do, thanks to Ann from WDET, also Tim Kiska, who's got the Detroit History Podcast. Go check that out, and James Kuhl over at the Tipping Point Theater. Go check that out as well. That's opening this weekend. Also want to thank Jag, and I want to thank Shay, our intern, and I want to thank James Clausen. They all help us do the show.
Yeah, man. Keep it wonderful.
If you want to check out the website, we've got a full listing of everything that we've talked about in this show. It's over at thedebriefdetroit.com. While you're there, sign up for the email list, and we will email you a list of what's going on around town every single week. You can find this podcast. If you like this podcast, go subscribe to it wherever you look for podcasts, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Google Play Music or Spotify, you name it, we're there. Leave a review while you're there. That helps other people find the show. And we've got a mobile app. You can download it for both your iPhone and your Android phone. It's the easiest way to listen to this podcast. If you want that link, just text the word Detroit to the number 444-999, and we will send you a link so that you can download the app. On social media, we are The Debrief Detroit on Facebook. We are at The Debrief on Twitter. We are also The Debrief on Instagram. We've got a Facebook group called What's Happening in Detroit This Week. Check that out if you want to keep track of everything that's going on around this city. And if you are a venue or an event organizer, you want to send announcements to us, you can email them to press@thedebrief.com, thedebriefdetroit.com, and you can add us to your your press release list there as well so that we know everything that's going on with you. All right, that's the credits. Let's get to this quiz. Mike, you ready?
Seth, I am ready.
Yeah, that's what he always
We
says.
need dramatic music,
I'll work on that.
like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
All right, here it is. The topic you gave me was Boblo Island. Here's your pop quiz. 2 of these statements are true. 1 of them is false. You have to identify the false statement. Statement number 1, the dance hall on Boblo Island featured one of the world's largest orchestrions, an automated self-playing orchestra machine which features 419 pipes and its very own percussion section. Statement number 2, the state of Michigan brought a racial discrimination case against the operators of the Boblo Island ferry service that went all the way to the Supreme Court. And statement number 3, as a teenager, Aretha Franklin injured her neck on the tilt-a-whirl and was forced to cancel a concert performance at Boblo Island.
Look, man, I'm not even going to waste any time with this because I know what the answer is.
All right, what's the answer?
It's easy and it's clear to see. The dance hall thing, 100% true.
Yes, that is true.
Which means the state of Michigan with the racial discrimination suit and Aretha Franklin injuring her neck. Riri would never be on a tilt-a-whirl. Never. So the Aretha Franklin thing is 100%
You win.
falsitude.
You win Aretha Franklin on a tilt-a-whirl, racism in Michigan. Which one's more likely?
Racism on a boat? Come on, dog. We've been there before.
Right. So, yes, you are correct. The Aretha Franklin one.
Now we should have some pomp and circumstance music.
I'll get some applause sound effects.
I know by Pablo.
All right, that's it.
Big ups to Riri.
That's it for the quiz. You have a homework topic for me, an assignment of some sort.
Yes, sir. I am very interested in learning what you can find out about Detroit and its role in the Underground Railroad.
Ooh.
Very prominent role.
Yeah, all right. I'll go find
There's a reason
out.
for it, why it's prominent.
I will do some research, and we'll talk about it next week. Thanks for listening.
The Debrief.
Your guide to Detroit's arts and entertainment scene.